sinners, and saints. Dust off those horns and halos. It's time for Alan After Dark.
What up, fam? It's your boy Alan. How you doing? I hope you're feeling well. I hope you're feeling sexy and horny and pussy, and I hope you're being the best slut you can be, or the greatest priest you can be, or what the fuck am I talking about? I have no clue. I woke up this morning and I look like shit. I gotta say, we drank enough to sink the Titanic last night, I believe. I don't know what I meant by that expression, but just, go with it. Oh, Jesus, we're already going off the rails here, aren't we? And we're just starting, not even a minute into this episode. Jesus. I do feel a bit of a fraud today. I feel like I'm unprepared for everything. I guess all I was geared for was the drinking last night. I was so excited about it coming up on the weekend that I got crazy before the weekend even got started. Jesus. And I've said Jesus like 5 times already. So please forgive me. I don't know what's going on with me. I have to say, one of the weirdest things, well, would it be weird? I don't know. You might think it's weird. I guess if I'm talking about it, I think it's weird. But I woke up in the middle of the night and I was literally fingering myself.
What the hell?
I kid you not. I had my finger up my ass.
What in the hell is this, bitch?
I didn't say I didn't enjoy it. I just have to say that I was surprised. I must have been having a dream. Well, okay, I was having a dream. And obviously that dream, somehow I connected it in the real world with my body. And no, it wasn't a dream about Henry Cavill. It was actually, what's his name? Penn Badgley. From the Netflix show, You. Oh my God. I finally finished that show, and I think it had a satisfying ending. I won't give it away, of course, but you know what? Penn is a really nice-looking man, and when he was running around in those black boxers there at the last few scenes, oh my God, nice hairy chest, and just nice to look at. But that character was so evil. Anyway, I'm getting off track there, but I believe that he was what I was dreaming about when I decided to engage in a finger binger in my sleep.
Oh my God.
When I finally came to myself and realized what was going on, I was like, what the fuck, Alan? What are you doing? I started thinking, do I do this all the time in my sleep? I probably do, but I bet we all do. Well, certain things in our sleep, right? I would think so. Do you sleep in the nude, or do you have pajamas, or do you sleep in your underwear? I sleep in the nude. And I'll tell you why. My doctor recommended it. He says, you wear clothes all day long, into the night. Let your body breathe sometimes. Nothing wrong with sleeping naked. Did I ever tell you that growing up, being raised in the Bible Belt in the South here in the USA, I actually thought it was a sin just to be naked. I did. Talk about brainwashing a kid, right? That's pretty bad, isn't it? I really did think that other than taking a bath or a shower, if you were naked, you could be naked when you changed clothes. But any kind of thing like sleeping in the nude, I was led to believe that that was a sin. How did I come to that conclusion? Who knows? But it was that constant drumming in our heads as kids in the Baptist church about virtually everything being a sin. That anything that you might enjoy must be a sin. Nudity was only a part of your life if you were having sex with a woman and trying to make a baby. All of us gay kids who grew up in the South in a religious family, we were getting mind-fucked all the time from the time that we could comprehend conversation. I mean, seriously, but I think that was just embedded in me because I think, my own family had hang-ups about being naked, that it only led to trouble. And now I only wish that me being naked led to trouble. What a fucked up thing to really think about as you're growing up. And I guess that's what this episode's going to be about. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see. About things that I was led to believe as a kid that I know now was total bullshit. I remember in the 8th grade. Now, I've told you all many times over several episodes how growing up, especially in those young years, I was the ugly kid. I was the smart kid, but we were poor and I was not physically attractive. I was quite unattractive. And I dealt with that. I mean, I'm okay with it. It's just something you have to deal with. But it's not easy when you are, a teenager in elementary school or high school or whatever. And in the eighth grade, I was invited to the cool kids party. One of the girls was throwing a party and I was invited, and it was a shock. One of the other girls wanted me to be invited for some reason. And I think mostly she wanted me invited because she felt sorry for me. I was this I was the smart kid, but I was also the sort of happy-go-lucky kid that was always nice and polite, never got in trouble, tried to do my best to be friendly to everybody. So I was quite surprised when I was invited. And I told my mom I had been invited to go to this party, and I thought she would be unhappy with the idea, but she was all for it. I was scared, even though these were kids that I'd known for 8 years of school already. And I did go, but I was very nervous about it. Anyway, at the party, I tried to be cool and hang out, and I tried to wear my coolest and nicest outfit, which was not very cool or nice. Anyway, they decided to play like a version of Spin the Bottle. And I actually kissed a couple of the girls. I kept that a secret. I never told my parents I had kissed somebody at that party because, once again, I thought stuff like that would be considered a sin. Now, my cousin, who was in the same grade as I was, he was at this party as well. This is the cousin I've mentioned before who always played with his dick. He couldn't keep his hands off his crotch. He was dating, going with one of the girls in our class, so automatically he got an invite to this party. Well, at church, he asked me, "Did you tell your folks about us kissing and all that?" And I told him, "No, I didn't." And I said, "Did you tell yours?" And he said, "No, I didn't tell mine either." So we all, right there, we were conditioned to think that things that could be just as innocent as a kiss by two eighth graders was somehow a sin, something that you should probably face punishment for if people found out. Isn't that fucked up? Remember that I knew that I was different. I didn't even at that point really understand my sexuality. I just knew that there was something different about me. I was already exploring masturbation way before the eighth grade, and my fantasies were always of men, but I didn't still equate that with being gay. I remember one Sunday, our pastor preaching and bringing up homosexuality like he did on frequent occasions. He was making some kind of political comment about the homosexuals in San Francisco. So that kind of stuck with me that gay people, homosexuals, were only in San Francisco. So if I'm in Tennessee, I wasn't a homosexual. We're kids, okay? You rationalize everything, or you take everything literally from people that you think you're supposed to respect and from people you think have more knowledge. But do they? No, they don't. When I look back on some of the people that I knew that were adults at the church I went, I know now that most of them were morons. They had an agenda of their own, using religion to manipulate as many people as they could. Yes, it is as bad as I just described. Actually, probably worse. And yes, I just mentioned masturbation. Yeah, I was whacking off all the time as a kid. Did I think that was a sin? Absolutely. But I did it anyway. I used to think, like, for example, when you're in school, those young years, you were always excited at the possibility of snow because you might get out of school the next day. And I used to think, like, there would be a forecast for snow, and everybody would be excited about probably getting out of school the next day. I would masturbate, and then we didn't get snow. So it was my fault. I committed a sin, and that prevented it from snowing. So I caused everybody to have to go to school just because I whacked off. the night before. I really did believe that at one point. I did. That had I not jacked off, it would have snowed. God wouldn't be punishing me, and he would have let it snow so we could be out of school. I can laugh about it a little bit now, but it's pretty sad, isn't it? It's pretty sad, that feeling now, looking back on it, that I was manipulated into having such fear that I was afraid to do anything. That fear almost kept me from sneaking off to a gay bar the first time that I went. That fear told me over and over at first that being gay was going to send me to a place called hell that burned forever and ever and ever and ever. If you go back to some of my first episodes, you'll remember that same pastor, that same quote unquote minister who said the homosexuals in San Francisco line. He was the one that morning that said, when he was once again preaching against homosexuality, and I knew I was gay at this point, he said that as far as homosexuality goes, if it's against nature, it's against God. But I just kind of chuckled because I realized right then, homosexuality is my nature. So if that is my actual nature, as in the idea of nature, the natural world, then I was part of God, if a God existed. And he inadvertently reinforced my belief that being gay was okay. And it is okay, by the way. It's just a natural part of being a human. Religion has always been used to frighten people into behaving a certain way, or trying to empower certain people to discriminate against everybody else. Never forget that. I remember this one time, this visiting minister preached at an evening service, and he said in his sermon, he said God had given him a final warning to straighten out his ways and get back into church and become a minister. And he said that he thought that if he hadn't done that, that God would have killed his wife and his children, taken them away from him. And I was sitting there and I'm like, what in the hell is this bitch talking about? If there is a God, I think God would punish you. It's not your wife or your children's fault that you're some kind of fuck up. So God would kill them to punish you? Wouldn't they be getting the punishment? Jesus. But that was the kind of things that we were hearing as kids at the church that I went to. And I can tell you this too. I remember one time, I think I told you all, you had services Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and once a month on a Saturday, they had a church singing where you had visitors who were singers and gospel groups and so on and so forth. And I remember one time that a man called our pastor. He told us all this. A man called and asked for permission to come. And he said, of course you're welcome. Why did the man feel the need and the pressure to call and ask if it was okay? He was black. And he had to actually make sure that it was okay to come to our church. How horrible is that? That he felt like he had to do that when all should be welcome at a church. All should be welcome. And he did come and he was treated like everybody else. But it just goes to show you how bad it is when it comes to things like race in the South. I also remember how women always wore dresses because there's that scripture in the Bible about women wearing clothing that pertains to a man. It's just the most ridiculous thing because didn't men in Roman times and Greek times basically wear dresses, robes and shit? So one time a woman came in, she was wearing blue jeans. She felt so uncomfortable that she left. Well, if your religion is, I don't know, it just feels to me like, is God going to punish you when you go stand before him at the last judgment and he's going to say, oh, you were wearing jeans at a church, so that punishes you to hell? I mean, good God. This whole manner, these whole weird rules that churches had are just so ridiculous. But you do see, right, that it's all about control. It's about manipulating people to doing what you want them to do to basically make them sheep. There's plenty of references to the good shepherd and the flock in the Bible. Sounds a little bit like a cult, doesn't it? And I would agree to a point. However, there's nobody in a Baptist church that I know of is ever going to drink the Kool-Aid. They're not going to commit suicide. They're too afraid of death to do something like that. But you all remember, don't you, when I told you that in the Baptist religion, technically you've never committed a sin unless you get caught. I mean, that's the way people behave. And I was telling you about a guy that I had kind of met on social media and on one of the hookup apps when I was actually on hookup apps. He's from my hometown, and I'd gone to school from first grade all the way through high school with his sister. And he was telling me, he's gay, he was telling me that he would stay over with his best friend, and his best friend's older brother would sneak into the room at night, and he said he'd come in and he'd fuck me. And I was like, you know what? There is so much that was going on in this backwater town that I don't guess anything would surprise me anymore. It just goes to show you that there were so many things going on behind closed doors that people never knew. I remember the one time I was underage, but one of my best friends where I was working, we would stop at this little store and she would go in and get wine coolers, and we would sit there in the parking lot and have a drink or two before we'd go on home. And then I realized that the person that was working in that store was somebody that went to our church. And I was like, oh shit, I am fucked. She will go and tell everybody that I was drinking, but she never did. She never did. I wonder, I guess there are just some people in the world who know that you can't throw stones if you're living in a glass house. And I know you all are thinking that, well, your parents were brought up the same way as you, and so you really have to cut them some slack. And I do agree with that, although I have to say, I changed. I understood the difference when I was old enough to comprehend. I didn't cling to those old, ridiculous narratives. I didn't continue to believe or even pretend to believe. So that's the hard part, I guess, I have dealing with, because they could have seen the light. They could have realized that those things were not really true and given me a different direction, maybe a way for me to understand earlier, appreciate what the body does, and that all of it is perfectly natural. To me, that's not an unreasonable request. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to place blame. I'm not pointing a finger, not at them in particular. I am pointing a finger at religion and those that encourage it in these negative ways. To me, that is the biggest problem. That's the biggest challenge of those of us who want to fight back against these falsehoods, these false narratives that include religion. The fact that they are still getting away with these lies and there are no consequences. I'm not one of those people who believe that you shouldn't pay a price for these horrible things you say to convince people that not only things like being naked is a sin, but being gay is a sin. Being a woman pregnant and not married is a sin. Having sex out of so-called wedlock is a sin. Those kinds of things benefit no one except for those who are trying to create their own cult-like following. If there really is a hell, those are the people that will be there. It is hard to believe here we are at the end of another episode of Alan After Dark. I hope you've been entertained and had fun and got a laugh or two and maybe some thought-provoking knowledge. Maybe a little more insight into what it was like growing up in the Bible Belt. And as always, grab life by the balls and be real. We'll see you soon.